Hello, friends and family. Welcome to Come Sit at My Table. I'm Tom. My wife, Melissa, is videoing today. It's a special day in our household. It's 3 days before Christmas, and we are cooking like crazy trying to get ready for our kids to come home to have Christmas with us. When we called our kids and talked to them about Christmas dinner, and we were asking if there was anything in particular they would like to have, they couldn't really come up with much. And then our oldest daughter said, if it's okay with you and Mom, we really would rather not have dessert. We're trying to watch how much sugar we eat. We're trying to eat healthier. And so we just would rather not have a bunch of desserts. And I said, that's fine. Your mom and I are trying to eat healthier too. We're trying to watch what we eat. So that's perfectly all right. I just won't make any desserts at all. Then there was a pause. And she said, unless you want to make Greek baklava, then that would be okay. So today we are making Greek baklava. Now, as you can tell by looking at this pale skin and these blue eyes, there's not a drop of Greek blood in my system. My heritage is Irish-Scottish on my dad's side and English and German on my mom's. So what am I doing making Greek baklava? Well, I'll tell you. My dad had a best friend for many years. He came from Greece when he was a young man and met my dad. And they were best friends for about 70 years. His name was Bill Constantopoulos. And his wife, Kay, who is a West Virginia woman, learned from his sister, I believe, from her sister-in-law, how to make Greek baklava. And Kay, in turn, taught me. This is as close as I can get to Kay's Greek baklava. I will never be able to make baklava as good as Kay's, and I know that because hers is fabulous. But this is really close to it, I think, and as good as I can get. Let's talk about what we're going to need to make Greek baklava. Now, this is just going to be part one of our video because there's another whole section on how to make the syrup that you pour on top of it, and we'll get to that later. This is just for the baklava part. You're going to need 2 pounds of phyllo dough. Now, you can find this in the frozen food section of your grocery store. This is a 1 pound box, and you're going to need 2 pounds. So I have 2 boxes. Inside of a box, you will find 2 rolls. So you'll actually need 4 of these. And you'll need to let those thaw in your refrigerator overnight before you make them. You're also going to need 5 cups of ground pecans. Now, you can use different nuts. If you want to use walnuts, you can use those. If you want to use pistachios, you can use those. But Kay uses pecans, and that's how she taught me to make it, and that's what I use. Now, you can see that we ground them up really fine. You can do that in a food processor or with a nut grinder. I don't think I would attempt to do it with a knife, but just grind them up pretty fine. You're also going to need 1/2 cup of sugar. You're going to need 1 tablespoon of cinnamon. Let me check. Yes, it is 1 tablespoon of cinnamon. And you're going to need 1.5 cups of butter. Now that's 3 sticks of butter, and you're going to need that melted. I've already done that, so we can move those out of the way. You're going to use a lot of butter. The first couple times I made this was just exactly enough butter. The last couple times I've made it, I've had to melt just a little bit more right at the end. So hopefully that'll be enough, but if we need to, we can always melt a little more. Now, you're also going to need a 9 by 13 baking dish, and you're going to need some kind of a pastry brush because you're going to be brushing butter a lot today. We're going to start by mixing together our nuts, our sugar, and our cinnamon. Nope, that won't fit. You're just going to put those together in a big bowl or your mixing bowl and stir those together. That wasn't quite full, so I'm going to put just a tad more. And then we're just going to stir that all up together. Just coat those nuts with that sugar and the cinnamon. Go all the way to the bottom. Get all of it stirred up together. You don't want your sugar and cinnamon on top, and you don't want it to the bottom. You just want it combined really well with those nuts. All right. Now, we're going to start by buttering the bottom of our pan. So we're just going to put some butter in there.
Have you sprayed this pan?
I did spray it real lightly. Kay did not teach me to spray the pan. Her recipe just says to butter the bottom. But, you know, just to make sure it doesn't stick while it's baking, I do spray the pan just a little. All right. So we have brushed butter on the bottom of our pan. You want to make sure it's all in the corners and along the side. There's a lot of butter in this. So just get ready. I didn't tell you this was a diet recipe. Now when you're using phyllo dough, you have to make sure that it does not dry out. It dries out very easily. And for me, the easiest way to ensure that is by having a damp paper towel that I can just lay on top of it between uses. All right. Now here's our phyllo dough. Just going to unroll it. It is very, very thin sheets. And we'll get our paper towel opened up. You do not want this wet. This paper towel cannot be wet. If it's wet, it will get your dough wet and that will make it fall apart. So we're going to take one thin little sheet and put in our pan. You will see that when it hits that butter, it starts to soak it up. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to trim just a little bit off the edge of this dough just to try to help it fit a little better. Okay, we'll see how that works. Yeah, it didn't go through. That's okay. Now, oh, yes. I gotta cover it. Keep that moist. Now, I'm going to butter this sheet. You do have to kind of be a little gentle with it because, man, these phyllo sheets are very thin. You can see the extra I have here on the side. I'm just kind of pushing it down in there. They are very thin and they want to tear easily. And you know what? If they tear, no big deal. We just kind of piece it back together and we keep right on going. You can tell I'm being very generous. That tore right there, that's no big deal. Just push it right back together. I'm being very generous with the butter because you have to coat the whole sheet. Now in this first layer, we are going to do 4 sheets of phyllo dough and put butter on top of each of them. Okay, there's my first one. Here goes my second one. Over in the corner there, buddy. Cover my sheet up. Do better again. And you're going to do, I think I've already said, you're going to do this 4 times before you ever get to the nuts. I will tell you that baklava is a very special dish to our family because of Kay and Bill. Kay always was very gracious and brought baklava to my parents. And even when my dad was in the hospital this summer and was
Not doing well.
And ended up passing away.
He still enjoyed the baklava, didn't he?
Yeah.
Even on days when he didn't want anything else to eat, he could eat the baklava.
Kay and Bill showed up several times a week to visit. And Kay would bring baklava. Got 2 there, I gotta separate those. All right, so here goes my 3rd one. Cover my phyllo.
Even though she brought it for your dad, he was nice enough to share some with us too, wasn't he?
We did get, I think, 1 piece each maybe. Honestly, I think he shared with his nurses too. But Kay knew that he absolutely loved baklava. So they showed up one day and she was carrying a little container, like a Tupperware container, and I knew what it was before she ever told us.
I can't remember, but one of our girls was there that day. And they got some baklava too.
Yeah, they did. Our girls love baklava.
There's really nothing not to love about it, except the calories, maybe.
Yeah, it's phyllo dough and butter, nuts, sugar, cinnamon, and then you do make a syrup to pour over it, which we'll get to later in the video. All right, that was layer number 3. So I really can't make baklava without thinking of my dad, because he sure did love this dessert. Now this is layer number 4. And this is the last layer we'll put in on this first section that gets butter. After we butter this one, we'll put on 1 more sheet of phyllo, but we won't butter it. You'll notice I'm not really rubbing the phyllo dough. I'm kind of dabbing, and if I have to, if it puddles, I will pull it toward me, but you have to be very careful because it is so thin and fragile. And it looks like I've got an air bubble under there, so I will work on that in a minute, but that's no big deal. Let's turn it around where I can get to it. Bill and Kay have 3 sons, and they all have families. I'm absolutely positive that for Christmas and probably most holidays, Kay fixes baklava for her family to have. They are Greek, and this is a traditional Greek dessert. Now, I've put on 4 layers and buttered each of those layers. Now, I put on a 5th layer, but I do not butter it. It goes on without butter on top. So I just use my fingers, go around the edge, get the corners kind of folded down a little bit. Oh, gotta cover that up. Just, you know, fold it in, it doesn't matter. It's all gonna taste the same.
Which is delicious.
I will tell you that Melissa and I were very blessed this summer. toward the end of the summer after my dad had passed away. We had a cruise planned to Europe. And my dad was very concerned near the end of his life about our cruise being canceled because he was sick. And he kept saying, please go on. Please don't stay here because of me. But he didn't make it that long. But we were very blessed that we got to cruise in Europe this summer. I'm trying to get those air bubbles out. There we go. And we visited a lot of places. Now, after you get that 5th layer on, you do not put butter on top of it. You're going to take 1 cup of your nuts and sugar and cinnamon and put right on top of there. And have that quite full. And just take your hand and kind of spread it out and cover your phyllo dough. You can see how I'm just kind of patting it out, getting a nice layer. It's not a thick layer. It's not thick at all. You just want to make sure it's covered. And if you have to, move some from one area to another. Just keep patting until you have enough. 1 cup should do it for a layer. All right, that is our first layer. Now, you don't do, here's a hump of nuts. Let's move some of those. You don't do 5 phyllo dough sheets on each layer. That's only the first layer and the last layer. All the rest of your layers, you're only going to do 2 sheets of phyllo dough. So now that we have, there we go. Now that we have our nuts on that layer, we're going to go in with another sheet of phyllo. And we are going to butter this layer.
I don't feel like you finished the story about our trip to
Europe. Oh, yeah. Okay. I'll do that while I'm buttering this. So we were so blessed to get to go to Europe this summer, and we had such a wonderful time. And we visited 39 different ports all over Europe. And luckily, we got to go to several ports in Greece. We went to Santorini, we went to Mykonos, we went to Athens. I don't know, did we have any more ports in Greece? We had several. And honestly, wow. Greece was just, it's indescribable. Everybody should get to go to Greece.
Well, the history's phenomenal.
It's unbelievable.
And the beauty is just unbelievable too.
And because of our friend Kay Constantopoulos, we tried baklava in every single port where we could get it.
We felt like it was just our duty, right?
Not just, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, you know, it was it was a scientific experiment, right? So we even got it in countries besides Greece. We had Turkish baklava, and you know, we had it all over the place. And it was good. But every single place we went, and we would get baklava, we would be eating it, and I would say, so how's your baklava? And what did you say?
Not as good as Kay's. But the Greek baklava was the best for sure.
I agree. Yeah, it was good everywhere, but by far the Greek baklava I thought was best. But Melissa was right. Okay, so we put down one layer on top of the nuts, buttered it, and now we're putting a second layer, and we're not going to butter this one. We're just going to put it down and do another layer of nuts. So, we tried baklava all over the Greek Isles. We tried it in Athens. And sometimes we tried it at more than one place in a city. We did.
No.
We would get it at one place and walk down the street, and I'd be like, oh, there's another place that has baklava. Let's try it in there. So we did.
We brought baklava back for our serving team, for the friends
Yeah.
we'd met on the cruise ship.
Yeah, and they loved us for that.
Oh, yes, we became very popular because of the...
But we didn't bother to say to them, but we know where you can get better baklava than this. If you knew Bill and Kay. Okay, now I've put down, after the nuts, I put one layer of phyllo and I buttered it. I put down a second layer of phyllo, but I did not butter it. Now we're going in with another layer of nuts. One more cup, and we will spread that thin. And on top of that fold. Now, I've got a little place right there that doesn't have any nuts. I need to fix that, because you don't want anybody to get a piece of baklava and be cheated out of some of the nuts. So just pat, 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 pat. Now, you know, this might seem hard, and I'm not going to lie to you. The first time I made it on my own, whew, I was a little intimidated.
It's not really all that hard, is it?
It's
It's just
not.
a big process.
It's a process because you have to layer, layer, layer. In fact, you're going to make 5 layers because you have 5 cups of nuts. Okay, now, you've seen how I put down 4 layers with butter on each one, and then a 5th layer of phyllo with no butter, a layer of nuts, a layer of phyllo dough with butter on top, a layer of phyllo with no butter, and another layer of nuts. We're going to continue doing this. 1 layer of phyllo with butter on top, and then a layer of phyllo with no butter, and a cup of nuts, until I use up all 5 cups of the nuts. When we get all 5 of those in there, we'll come back and show you how to do the very top layers of phyllo. So we'll be back in just a few minutes when I get this finished. We have done 4 layers of nuts with 2 layers of phyllo between each of those layers of nuts. We're down to our last cup, so I'm going to pour it on top, and we will spread it out. I want to make sure you have a nice layer of nuts on this top layer. And starting with 5 cups of nuts and a little bit of sugar and cinnamon, you should have enough. But, you know, if you get down to this last one and you feel like you're just a little short of a cup, add a few nuts. It's okay. Throw some more in there. All right. We've got all of our nuts on top now. And we're going to finish with 5 layers, 5 sheets of phyllo dough. We'll put down 1 sheet, butter it. 2nd sheet, butter it. 3rd sheet, butter it. Until we've done 5 sheets, and we will butter each of those 5 sheets. So, here we go. Oh, what we did discover is we don't need both boxes of phyllo dough. I think 1 box is going to be fine. Now, I will tell you that when I've made this before, we have needed more than 1 box. So I don't know if they're putting more sheets per box now, or I don't know. But we are obviously not going to need more than what's in 1 box for this baklava. So we're going to have another box of phyllo dough that we're not going to use today.
Darn, we may have to make more later.
That's what I'm thinking. Maybe make another one when we have friends over sometime.
We have a game night coming up.
Oh, that's right, we do. We have friends coming over to play games. So maybe we'll make that for game night.
Later in the new year.
Yeah. Think they'll eat it?
We can only hope that they won't.
Shame on you.
Oh, it's awful, isn't it?
Shame on you. You want to keep it for yourself, don't you?
This is really, of course, I say that about everything that you make, but this is an extra special temptation.
It's because it's just extra good, and it just means a lot to us.
Well, and we have our own good memories now with it too. And
yeah, that's true.
so it's extra special.
When your kids say, don't fix dessert unless you want to make baklava, that makes it kind of special. I'm about to the end of that package, so I'm probably going to have to open my second roll here soon. I did call Kay Constantopoulos this morning and talk to her. Just because, you know, if I'm going to use somebody's recipe, I want them to know that I'm videoing it and make sure that it's okay with them. I try my best to ask permission before I use somebody's recipe if I can know how to get a hold of them, if I can find them. I have recipes that are 30, 40 years old, and I don't know how to get a hold of the person who gave it to me, or unfortunately, sometimes they've passed away. But if I can figure out how to get a hold of the person, I will try to call and just make sure it's okay for me to share their recipe. So I got to talk to Kay this morning, and that was really special. And she was excited that I was making the baklava for us for Christmas. She asked about how our family was. It's just always special to talk to old friends. That's sheet number 2. I remember well when my dad and Bill became friends. Bill's a little bit younger than my dad. I think he's about 14 years younger than my dad. And you know, he had come to the United States to go to a Christian college. And he came to West Virginia to a church camp that my dad was managing in a little town called Cottle, right outside of Craigsville, near Summersville. And he came with a family that he was staying with for the summer because their son was also in the Bible college. And, you know, here are these two guys. One's, I don't know, 14 years older than the other, something like that, 13, 14 years older than the other one. The younger one is Greek. Hasn't been in the United States very long, from Greece. The other one's an old, red-headed preacher man. Well, he wasn't old then, but he was older than Bill. Preacher from West Virginia who knew almost nothing about Greece or Greek. Okay, there's our third layer. And yet, they hit it off and became best friends. And I'm just going to tell you, my dad would have laid down his life for Bill and Kay. My parents absolutely adored them. And so, I adore them too. And making this dessert always makes me just a little emotional. I apologize for that. Whew. I've lost count. Is this number 4?
This was 4.
So I'm going to have to open this new roll for 1 sheet of phyllo. Oh, well.
Could you do it with
Nope.
just 4?
Nope.
Afraid you'd mess it up?
I don't want to mess it up.
Okay.
I probably could. I mean, what's the difference in 4
That's what I was
paper thin
thinking.
sheets and 5? Now, do I do it with 4?
I probably would, but you know.
Okay, I'll do it with 4. That means we can do 3 more baklavas. Now,
This is getting better all the time.
I'm going to look at Kay's directions after the 5th sheet. If any butter remains, pour it over the top. Well, okay, if I have to. All right, so we have a little bit left. I'm just going to pour it right on top. Because, you know, everything's better with butter. And we're just going to spread that out. Now, baklava, real Greek baklava, is cut into diamond shapes. But that's just a lot of work. Sorry, it is. So I'm not doing that. I'm just going to cut it across and this way. I think I'll start this way.
You're cutting all the way through, right?
No.
No.
I'm cutting about halfway to 2/3 of the way through. You do not want to go to the bottom.
Is this called scoring it?
Yeah, I guess.
More than scoring it.
Yeah, well, you're going a little deeper, I think, than scoring it. But you don't want to go all the way to the bottom. I think I'll go about right there. You got to just be careful and not tear up your phyllo dough.
Because it's pretty soggy right now.
It is very wet and soggy. And I am not going to the bottom. I'm going down about halfway. It's about halfway over. Just use your fingers to help keep the phyllo kind of in place. The first cutting like this is not too hard. But when you go this way, it wants to fall apart. So here we go. Stay on there. So, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to finish cutting this, scoring it, whatever you want to call it. And then we will come back after I finish it and we'll put it in the oven. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Well, our baklava is scored. Now remember, we did not cut all the way through it. We just went down about halfway, just so that butter can soak in and so that after it's baked, there will be places for the syrup to soak down into the baklava. We're going to put this in a 250-degree oven for 1 hour. When it's ready to come out, we will come back, show you what it looks like, and then it has to cool completely before we can make the syrup to put on it that will soak into it. So when it comes out of the oven, an hour from now, we'll bring you back and let you see what it looks like. We'll see you very soon. Our baklava has been in the oven at 250 degrees for an hour. The timer is just about to go off. So let's take it out and look at how it's done. There's our timer. Lower timer off. All right. You can see our baklava has cooked, it's baked. It is a little firm on top, not hard, but it's firm. Now, that's step 1. Step 2 is that we have to make a syrup to pour over it. That you cannot pour the syrup over hot baklava. You have to wait until it is completely cooled. In fact, it doesn't even hurt to let it cool to room temperature and then put it in the refrigerator for an hour or so. But as long as you let it come to room temperature and it's completely cooled, then you can put the hot syrup on it. You never put hot syrup on hot baklava. Or vice versa, you never put cold syrup on cold baklava. You should let your baklava completely cool and then pour hot syrup on it as soon as you make it. So, we will let this cool for a few hours. I'm going to guess it'll take, 3-4 hours at least for it to cool completely to room temperature. But when it's cooled and the bottom feels like there's no heat left, we will come back and make the syrup, and then we will pour the syrup over the baklava. Once the syrup is poured over, you have to give it time to kind of soak in. You want it to soak into each piece, and then you can eat it. And you'll notice here, I don't know if you can see this. Hopefully you can if you zoom in on it. You can see where this is kind of separated, where we cut it. And that's going to allow that hot syrup after a while to soak down in there and get into each piece of the baklava. So when it baked, it kind of shrunk slightly, leaving those cut lines, those score lines, exposed so the syrup will soak in. So it's done its job, and now we just have to wait for this to cool so we can put the syrup on. We will be back as soon as this is cooled down. Our Greek baklava has completely cooled. There's no warmth, no heat at all to it. So now that it is cooled to room temperature, we can make our syrup to pour on top of it. We will start with 1.5 cups of water and 2 cups of sugar. Now we're going to put those together in a saucepan and boil those two for 5 minutes. After they boil 5 minutes, we're going to come back and add 1/2 cup of honey, 3 whole cloves, and 1 cinnamon stick. We will then boil all of that for another 5 minutes. When that 5 minutes is up, we will pour the hot syrup over our cooled baklava, and then it has to sit and soak until it's completely cooled. And once that syrup has completely cooled, then we can cut through all the way through to the bottom of the baklava and we can eat it. So let's get started with our water and our sugar. And we're going to bring the 2 of those to a boil on the stovetop. Alright, I need to grab a spoon and we will stir this. Try to get that sugar started dissolving and bring this to a boil. Now I do have this on high just to try to get it up to a boil. And once it comes to a boil, we will start the timer for 5 minutes. It needs to boil for exactly 5 minutes. And once it does, then we can add the honey, the whole cloves, and the cinnamon stick. But this first part, the sugar and the water, needs to boil for 5 minutes. Actually, when you're boiling just sugar and water together, you're making what's called a simple syrup. So that's what we're doing here. We're just making a simple syrup, and then we will add our cloves and our honey and our cinnamon stick to it. All right.
Do you have something in there?
It was just a little speck, looked like a speck of pepper.
Okay.
I don't know if it was in the sugar or I don't know what it was. And I don't think I even got it. I think it might still be in there, but well, maybe I did get it. I don't see it now.
Okay, we'll be back in 5
All right, we're going to let this boil and we'll be back. Our sugar water has been boiling for 5 minutes. And now we're going to add the honey, which was 1/2 cup. And I want to get every bit of that out of there because that honey is what helps make this baklava so good. And we want to add 3 cloves. Now you might look at those 3 little cloves and say, what in the world could those do? But let me promise you, they will add a lot of flavor. And we're adding 1 cinnamon stick. So we will take our spoon and stir that up. Get that honey dissolved in that sugar water. We will bring it back to a boil and let it boil, come to a full rolling boil. And we will let it boil for 5 minutes. Then we will come back and pour this syrup over our baklava. We'll be back in just about 5 minutes. Our sugar, cinnamon, honey, cloves, and cinnamon have now been boiling for 5 minutes. So we're going to turn the fire off, turn off our timer, and we will need to get out that cinnamon stick and those 3 cloves. And then we are ready to pour. Okay, so we will take this syrup and pour it right on our baklava. I know that people are going to say, this looks like a lot of syrup, and it is. But this makes the baklava what it is. Without this syrup, baklava is not baklava. Now, that needs to sit and soak in until it is completely cooled. And once it is all soaked in, then we can cut all the way down through the bottom and we can eat a piece. Not that I know anybody in this house who wants a piece of baklava.
I will sacrifice for the purposes of this video.
All right, when it's completely cooled, and that's going to take a couple of hours, we'll be back and we're going to eat a piece. The syrup has soaked into our baklava. I believe it has all been absorbed. You could tell when I put it on there that it was kind of standing in the syrup and it looked like way too much. But now that it has cooled completely, there is none standing on top of it and it's all soaked in. It looks really good. So we're going to try a couple of pieces. A piece for Mama and a piece for me. Now, the first piece is always the hardest one to get out of there, like any cake, pie, any dessert. It's always the hardest one to get out. So, I know what I didn't do.
Oh yeah, we didn't cut all the way through, did we?
Didn't cut all the way through it. It's not going to come out if I don't cut all the way through it. Remember when we cut it, we only went about halfway down. So now we have to cut all the way through. And I know you don't want to watch me cut this whole baklava, so I'll just cut these pieces and do the rest of it later. Let me tell you, if you've never had Greek baklava, you have missed a real treat. It is so, so good. You really should treat yourself to some. And I'm not talking about the kind you buy at the store. That's just not great baklava. Let me get another piece and put on the plate with that so it looks a little better. yeah. Man, this looks so good. Now, let's turn that around where you can get a good picture of it. Doesn't that look delicious? Yummo. Question is, how does it taste?
Looks fabulous.
It smells good too. You ready?
I can't take a bite that big. I'm not the bites that you have.
Man, oh man, oh man. Oh no. There's a little princess bite for you. K. Constantopoulos taught me well.
It's delicious.
Man, that is so good.
You obviously have to be a pecan lover, but...
Well, that's a good point. I think I said it earlier. You do not have to use pecans. If you get Turkish baklava, it's almost always made with pistachios. If you get it in some other countries near the Greek Isles, you'll find it with walnuts. So really, it's up to you. You can use whichever ground nut you want. They all work.
Those are delicious, though.
But Greek baklava is my very favorite. Man, that's good. Okay. I could eat that whole pan, and I am not kidding you. I could sit down and eat that whole thing. We do appreciate you watching our videos. We'd appreciate it if you'd click the thumbs up below this video and give us a like, and click the subscribe button if you haven't already, and the little notification bell beside of it. And of course, if you would share our videos, that just helps us get the word out. Also, we do appreciate all the kind comments many of you have left on our videos. Thank you for watching us make baklava. I really hope you will take this on. There are a lot of little small steps to put it together, but I will tell you, it's not hard to do. It is a little time consuming because you have to do so many layers and you have to wait for it to cool a few times, but it is worth every single minute of it, and your family will think you are the bomb for making this homemade at home. All right. Thank you again. And remember, you are always welcome to come sit at my table. Happy New Year.